Sport Psychology. 6.1 Sport Psychology. Sport psychology refers to the scientific study of human behavior and experience in sport. Sport psychology has two subunits. It includes the researcher who studies sportsmen and their behaviors, and the sport psychologist who uses the knowledge base of researchers to make psychological interventions in improving the performance of sportsmen. What is the need for a sports psychologist? Coaches and trainers focus almost exclusively on left brain activities including game plans, strategy and technique, speed, agility, etc. Right brain activities include balance, emotions, music, and visualization, all of which can enhance performance, but these are often neglected by athletes. The job of a sports psychologist at the individual level is to develop and enhance skills based on right brain activities. At the group level, the psychologist examines various psychological factors operating at group level to assist in enhancing performance of sportsmen in team games. 6.2 Psychological Interventions. A variety of psychological interventions are recommended to enhance the performance of sport persons in both individual and team games. First, we would look at certain interventions common to most games, then go on to discuss certain psychological factors that specifically affect team games and how these can be remedied. Arousal. The Yerkes-Dodson law states that an inverted U relation exists between arousal and performance. That is, an over-aroused or under-aroused individual can't perform her optimal best. Oxendine 1970 has verified this law in the case of many sports. Sports coaches aren't adept at explaining what the optimal level of arousal is. An over-aroused sports person has lower concentration and inferior focus. Over-arousal also can lead to anger and aggression while playing. So how to ensure optimal level of arousal? Oxendine 1979 observes that the amount of arousal necessary for optimal arousal is dependent on the nature of the skill involved in the game. Games which need complex skills need a lower level of arousal because arousal interferes with cognitive activities such as concentration, fine muscle movement, and coordination. For example, playing golf needs great amount of concentration and calculation. Hence, it is not good for a person playing golf to be over-aroused. Similarly, in the case of shooting, sharp perceptual skills and attention are necessary. On the other hand, higher level of arousal benefits games that require less complex skills but more strength and endurance. The sports psychologist usually first determines what level of arousal is good for a particular sport. Then the psychologist trains the sports person to maintain the level of arousal. Usually a relaxation technique is learned by the sports person. The psychologist conditions by classical conditioning a trigger word to the relaxation. Whenever the sports person thinks about the trigger word, she becomes relaxed. In the real sports, if she gets over aroused at any time, she says the trigger word to herself and immediately she becomes relaxed. Her state of extreme arousal is moderated. In a study by Maman Paul and Kanupriya Garg in 2012, biofeedback was taken from basketball players by reading their heart rate variability as they played under pressure. They found that self-efficacy and performance of the players increased after training on coping with anxiety. Imagery. William Arthur Ward had once opined, if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. He was basically stating how powerful a tool imagery is. Imagery is a cognitive process in which one uses her mind to create an experience that is similar to a physical event. Caroline Sugarman, author of the book Winning the Mental Way, observes that the body cannot distinguish between something that is really happening and something that an individual visualizes. Hence, the mind can be used to recall past performances that were good and practice them in the mind. correct technical errors committed previously, put oneself in various situations and visualize how to tackle the situation. Mental practice, it has been found, is quite helpful. When you practice executing a skill in your head, it becomes a conditioned response. When a skill becomes a conditioned response, it comes to you instinctively when you are in the field. The sports psychologist teaches the sports person how to use all her senses in imagery. First, the sports person is trained in external imagery by showing videos of past events. The sports person is made to spot her errors and visualize the correct response in that condition. Then the sports psychologist trains her in internal imagery by asking her to visualize certain situations and what her response would be to such situations. The 4C. Concentration, confidence, control, and commitment are the 4 C's that psychologists consider the main mental qualities important for successful performance in most sports. Concentration is the mental ability to maintain focus. If the sports person is distracted, her energy can't be channelized in the right direction and hence reduced performance. Hence, psychologists train sports persons in concentration. Different sports require different kind of concentration. Some required sustained concentration, cycling, tennis and squash. Others require short bursts of concentration, cricket, shooting and golf. While still other games like sprinting and skiing require intense concentration. The psychologist identifies what kind of concentration is needed in a particular sport. Then she identifies common distractions like anxiety, mistakes, negative thoughts, fatigue, and weather. The sports person is then trained on controlling and handling these stressors. Confidence is the result of a comparison that a sports person makes between her ability and the goal. Self-confidence results when the individual thinks that she has the ability to achieve the goal. Underconfidence results when she thinks she can't do it. Overconfidence results when the individual is complacent and isn't putting the extra effort to win. While underconfidence and overconfidence are both harmful, self-confidence should be inculcated in the sports person. To improve self-confidence, the sports psychologists often use mental imagery to help the sports person visualize previous good performances, imagine various scenarios and how one could cope with them. Control in the 4C refers to emotional control. Two emotions that the athlete feels tough to tackle are anger and anxiety. When a sports person becomes angry, the cause of anger often becomes the focus of attention. The concentration shifts from the task to the cause of anger and performance deteriorates. Due to decreased performance, confidence on self is reduced, which leads to more anger. Anger becomes a vicious cycle which over-arouses the player and makes her lose her concentration. Another such emotion that hampers concentration and confidence is anxiety. Anxiety can be physical anxiety, sweating, nausea, etc., of mental, worry, negative thoughts, or both. To tackle anxiety, sports psychologists train the sports person in relaxation. For anger, certain anger management techniques are used. Self-instructional therapy is quite popular among sports psychologists as a means for anger management. Commitment refers to how focused and motivated the sports person is towards her ultimate goal. There are many hassles that a sports person has to face in day-to-day life. In the face of this, keeping up one's morale and commitment is a challenger. To enhance and sustain the sports person's commitment level, the psychologists usually use goal-setting techniques which will be discussed next. Motivation. Motivation drives behavior towards a goal. Here, the goal is to win the game and or to excel in performance. Before discussing various techniques used by sports psychologists, let us understand first the nature of motivation of athletes. According to the achievement goal theory of Dweck 1986, there are broadly two orientations of the individual playing a game: mastery orientation and ego orientation. In mastery orientation, the focus is on personal, giving maximum effort to realize the individual's full potential. Those with mastery orientation are intrinsically motivated. They don't compete with others but with themselves. They always strive to get their best from their potential. Ego orientation, on the other hand, implies that the athlete seeks to perform better than the others. She compares herself with others when setting her target. In the ego approach style, there is competitive orientation. One wants to be better than others. In the ego avoidance style, there is a fear of failure. One fears that she may be negatively evaluated by the audience if she doesn't perform up to the mark, and this motivates her to perform. Figure 6.2, Basis of Achievement Goal Theory. So, which of these styles is the best? Obviously, the ego avoidance style is not good. It leads to a fear of failure. When fear of failure motivates one to perform, she can't give her best. Rather, the sports person suffers from anxiety and lack of focus. Mastery goals are better than ego approach goals. This is because when one is motivated by mastery goals, she enjoys doing her work. This keeps up her motivation and commitment. She strives for mastery without bothering what is the performance of others. In the ego approach style, the goal is to be better than others and stay there. If you don't face any more challenges, you don't try to realize your full potential. Sports psychologists recommend that while training off field, one must be motivated by mastery goals. But once you are in the real game, you should be motivated by ego approach goal. Ego avoidance goals are dangerous and should be avoided. Many psychologists have observed the goal setting improves performance. The sports psychologist helps the sports person to set SMART goals. SMART stand for specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, time-bound. The goal should be specific and realistic. It ought to be challenging but not that challenging as to overwhelm the sports trainee. The goals should be measurable and continued feedback should be provided by the coach and sports psychologist. Often chaining and shaping techniques are used to teach trainee sportspersons complex motor skills. Goal setting is easier said than done. There are many pitfalls in setting goals, which the sports psychologist should analyze and remove. Some of the common mistakes in goal setting are as under: setting too many goals. Too many goals at one time confuse the brain and diffuse energy. As a result, athletes and coaches end up accomplishing none of them. Instead, athletes should pick the goal that is most important and master it first. Then the athlete can move on to the next goal. Failing to set process goals. Some coaches make the mistake of setting outcome goals while ignoring process goals. A football coach may set a goal for the team to win the state championship tournament in next winter. This is fine as an outcome goal, but this coach also needs to set process goals and meet some performance benchmark in time-bound manner. Setting unspecific goals. Goals should be specific. For example, if a coach wants to increase the stamina of a player, she should not set increase stamina as a goal. The coach should find out the means of increasing stamina and give clear goals. Run 2 miles in 12 minutes. Focusing too much on ego goals and not enough on mastery. Ego goals are outcome goals and invariably mean winning in sports. Some coaches and players tend to focus too much on outcome goals while neglecting mastery goals. Mastery goals are about improving skill and performance, regardless of outcome. Concentrating on mastery goals improves you incrementally over time. Even if you are not winning, you are getting better at the game. Confidence building. Psychological interventions are required to build confidence in a player. Confidence plays a big role in competitiveness of a player. Lay audience usually believe that a player should believe in herself in order to be confident. A belief in self's ability is enough to garner confidence. But that is not so. Confidence develops by a complex psychological process. Secondly, coaches at times confuse cockiness with confidence. If you feel good about yourself, you are confident. If you do not feel good but pretend that you feel good, that's cockiness. A confident person is strong, but a cocky person is insecure. A cocky person pretends that he is confident, but truly he is affected by a lack of confidence. Psychologists have found from analysis of sportsmen that confidence develops in three stages that form a virtuous cycle. Namely, think positively, take risk, and experience success. Experiencing success gives a positive reinforcement and increases positive thinking. Confidence building process should include these three components in day-to-day training. More the reinforcement, more the confidence. The coach should be careful to challenge the player with achievable risks so that the player does not get demotivated. Consistently experiencing failure gives a negative feedback and can break the virtuous cycle. Focus. Successful athletes are masters of focus. Optimal focus helps an athlete in consistent and smooth execution. It improves performance, whereas faulty focus leads to inconsistent execution and deteriorates performance. Hence, focus is important. Distractions are of two types, internal or external. Training for focus helps the athlete in managing both kinds of distractions and in focusing on the goal at hand. Empirical studies have shown that faulty focus leads to higher than optimal arousal and leads to bad performance. Hence, training for focus is an integral part of sports coaching. Figure 6.4, the focus cycle. Strategies to improve focus include training to focus on the process rather than the outcome. Deep breathing practice. Focus on what the athlete can control. This leads to an internal locus of control feeling and stabilizes the arousal level. Psychological interventions in team sports 6.3. There are broadly two types of sports, interactive and coactive. In interactive sports like football and hockey, overall performance depends on interpersonal dynamics of the sportsman. In coactive sports like swimming and golf, individual performance doesn't depend on others' performance. Cricket is a hybrid wherein the batsman's behavior is coactive but the fielding team's behavior is interactive. There are many psychological factors involved in interactive sports and demand psychological interventions to enhance group performance. Some of these are social loafing, group cohesion, coordination factors. Steiner 1972 observes that a good team is more than a group of skilled players. If members don't work together in coordination, then actual productivity AP is equals to PP potential productivity minus LDFGP losses due to faulty group processes. Social loafing inverted commas refers to a phenomenon wherein individual performance decreases when the individual finds herself in a group. According to Woods in 1998, social loafing is essentially the results of decrease in motivation. This may happen due to reduction in the sense of responsibility. Woods therefore believes that sports coaches and psychologists should monitor and give feedback on performance to each individual and to the group rather than only to the group. Cohesion is the psychological process that transforms a collection of individuals into a group. Degree of cohesion, of course, varies from group to group. Technically, cohesion can be defined as the total field of forces which act on members to remain in a particular group. In sports, there are two major types of cohesion. Number 1, task cohesion. Number 2, social cohesion. Task cohesion refers to the degree to which group members work together and are committed to achieve common goals such as winning the match. Social cohesion is the degree to which group members share personal rapport and goodwill with each other. Both forms of cohesion are important to build effective teams. When dealing with the issue of cohesion, the sports psychologist first takes direct assessment as given by the players to determine the amount of cohesiveness in the team. Then she takes certain steps as below. Conduct periodic team meetings, build mutual respect among members and try to remove any prejudice or misunderstanding among the members. Develop effective two-way communication between players. Coordination factors refer to the degree to which each player's skill are meshed together with the skill of others in the team. This has to be a central feature in sports training in interactive sports. Hence, training time should include practicing, for example, passing a football among players, timing and pattern of players' movement when scoring a goal or when taking a penalty corner. Rehabilitation of injured athletics. A major challenge for the sports psychologist is to rehabilitate injured athletes. It has been found that injured athletes commonly experience tension, depression, anger, and other forms of emotional distress. Lady et al. 1994. Hence, a lot of research is now being done on the rehabilitation of injured athletes. Many models have been established to explain psychological responses to sport injury. Initially, stage models were very popular. According to Kubler-Ross 1969 stage model, injured athletes with terminal illness go through 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Another stage model presented by Hardy in 1990 states that emotional reaction after injury has two phases: a reactive phase and adaptive phase. The reactive phase includes shock and negative emotions such as depression, anger, and denial. The adaptive phase includes positive emotions such as confidence and hope. A major shortcoming of stage models was that they failed to account for individual differences in response to athletic injury. Hence, many researchers started building models based on cognitive appraisal of injury. According to one such model, proposed by Brewer in 1994, injured athletes' personal factors and situational factors influence their responses to injury. Psychological interventions in the case of injured sportspersons are varied, and various techniques are suitable for various conditions. Some techniques found to be effective are counseling, which includes active listening, exploring coping strategies, and challenging negative beliefs, etc. Cognitive interventions, including positive self-thought, rational reasoning, etc. Cognitive behavioral interventions, such as self-monitoring of distress, self-talk to manage pain and anxiety, etc. Relaxation therapy, including stress reduction, training, yoga, and meditation, by Naoi and Ostro in 2008. So this was all for the sports psychology from the book Applied Psychology by Mr. Smarak Swain. Thank you.